Hello everyone, I am Mork and I make minis in HeroForge. This week's mini that we are looking at is Koro, and Koro is a monkey monk that is played by Phobos in our online D&D campaign. This is the last member of our party. So yeah, I think we're gonna take a look at not really the past, honestly, because I don't really have a lot of saves for this Monkeyman. Uh, yeah, I made this guy like ages ago, and I didn't really do like a proper save progress. But I also didn't do a lot of save progress because Koro was very surprisingly easy to make. And it's because when I started making Koro, it was a time when HeroForge released a new model, specifically speaking, a gorilla people model. So, what I did with Koro over here, he didn't used to look like this, like when I was starting. I just kind of like shaped him into this sort of a shape. So I was working with these very burly ape folk features. This is more of like a sumo Koro kind of a thing. And then after that, I just simply changed the proportions to something a little bit more lean because Koro isn't like a monkey man. I think I use this one as the base. And then lastly, about the head. So to make the head, I simply combined like some things that, for example, I use like fairy tale goblin so that he has less of a forehead, and smaller monkey brain, I guess. Then I used a lot of the rounded cartoony features. Koro is supposed to be like this young, inexperienced monkey adventurer that goes to the world for the first time and he has to make proud his village or something like that. I don't really know the backstory all that much because we didn't get to the core of some characters and who they truly are. I simply use a lot of these like rounded features wherever possible, and where some features were like significantly important to give it like a proper monkey vibe, I simply use like ape features here, ape features here to make him a little bit more round, and open features. And after that was kind of assigned, I also changed the edits here. So essentially what I made here is that I made the upper length like as smallest as possible. I made the lower length as smallest as possible. I made the upper width relatively small. I made the middle width, lower width. I was just essentially just making the head smaller so it looks a little bit more cute. And then I just simply made it a little bit larger over here, and that's kind of how I got the monkey look. One of the issues that I had with Koro was his color scheme, because Phobos was mentioning that she thinks she would like to have like a sky blue robes, and I was like, "Are you going to mind if I don't make the robe sky blue? Is this gonna be a problem?" And she was like, "Well, there is like a river near the village and the river is like sky blue, so it's like very important, this color." So um I didn't really make the robe sky blue because they were looking a little bit too cold. I can show you later. But instead what I was trying to do is in the robes I used like my favorite one of my favorite color combinations, which is like this minty minty sort of a color with this sort of an almost, it's not, I want to say it's quite sky blue. Yeah, but it's like greenish, bluish, whitish sort of a combination. And I don't know. I think this can, like, technically speaking, like kind of pass maybe as a sky blue color. I don't know. But I really just love how the green looks, because this sort of a green color, it gives that sort of a youth, like it to me it just kind of looks more alive with this sort of a color. So this is why I ultimately went with this one. I also have like this sort of a color scheme, which kind of looks like a League of Legends skin, from when it like started. And yeah, this was just me kind of like trying to make it, the colors on the ropes a little more sky blue, but it looks just cold, man. It looks very, very cold and not as lively as I wanted it to look. All the other colors are actually inspired by ChatGPT art. Is because when I asked Phobos to give me some sort of a reference, I said that it could be even like AI art. So it was like me who asked, and it's like, okay, just don't kill her. Just don't kill her, please. When I tried like applying these sort of colors, it just wasn't. It wasn't feeling the same, and yeah, I didn't really like it. I tried also like this sort of a color, and I suppose this sort of a color scheme is much closer to a sky blue. And then I also had like this sort of a super water sky blue color. In the end, I kind of decided to go just like with this sort of a color. I think personally this looks the best, but you know, it's like an opinion. Another thing that Phobos asked about this mini is that the she wanted the mini to look fun, you know? I figured it could be kind of a fun scene to make it like maybe Koro is getting attacked by some guards or something like that. Maybe he caused something and now he's like running away. They're shooting arrows after him and he is running through like some kitchens and there's just like chaos everywhere with like vegetables flying, some berries flying, and some bananas flying. We'll speak about the bananas shortly. This is very important. And yeah, just a bowl hitting the ground. And I figured it would be pretty fun thing. Maybe like as Koro is running through this kitchen, he cheekily grabs one banana and then he grabs with his other foot, or he readies himself to grab another uh, banana right here as he kind of like leans on his staff into some sort of an acrobatic move. Maybe he makes like a tumble after this or something like that. Because as you can see, like this sort of a position, it's like you're going backwards, you know. So he's gonna make some sort of an acrobatic move. So let's talk about the bananas a little bit. And there's like a bit of a strange thing with bananas in HeroForge. If I want to add like a banana into somebody's hand, or let's say, oh my god, they did it? Oh, oh. You can add a banana! Look, back in the day, we weren't able to add bananas in people's hands. We were only able to add like banana guns, but we weren't able to add actual bananas. So I'm shocked right now. Aha! So this is the issue. The issue is that the tail can only hold a banana gun. That's the issue. But it cannot hold bananas. Like, that's kind of crazy, isn't it? How can tails hold banana guns, but they cannot hold just bananas? I don't know. And speaking of bananas, this is a message to the Hero Forge team. We need like a banana. Whoosh. We need a banana slip that we can put on the crowd for like comedic effects. That would be nice if we could have that. Thank you. Let's talk also briefly about the berries here. So the berries here that I kind of made and just like put around everywhere as they're like I was trying to make like a sort of an effect that like the berries are just like bouncing around in real life. As you can see, like all of the berries are attached to something, whether like a tail or like this bowl here. It's because if I like put it into the air, the mini would not be printable because You cannot make a mini with something flying in the middle uh, without it being upheld by anything. So that was kind of like the idea. That's why like the berries are like all over the place. And these berries are actually just snowballs. They are snowballs, and they will like shrink down to the absolute minimum size. And I think they look like pretty good, right? I also just wanted to create like maybe some sort of an effect that they're flying out of this bowl right here. And speaking of the bowls, I also wish we had some sort of an effect which looks like cracked, um, cracked mirror or like cracked bowl. Some sort of a decal that shows something cracked, that would be really nice. And also, I would imagine like a lot of people would want to use like a sort of a cracked effect on people's faces, etc. So that would be cool if we could get that in the future. Phobos is playing him with a staff, and she's also playing him with a flute. And she also said that the flute is like super duper important. And another thing I also want to mention are the arrows. The arrows are not really. I made them slightly smaller than what HeroForge usually gives you. HeroForge makes arrows absolutely ridiculously huge. I don't like that, to be honest. So this arrow here is like slightly downsized. And in order to make it like downsized, whoop, it's kid bashed in. Yep, that's right. Koro actually didn't used to have an arrow in his hand. It actually just used to look like this. And he was just like taunting the guards, being like, hey, I'm out, see ya. But then I was like, I could just make him catch an arrow, and that's gonna look even cooler. This mini should be like printable, even if it says here that there are parts below ground. I believe the way this works is that if something is below ground, it simply doesn't get printed, but the things above do get printed. And although this is like some small parts, like the hair here, the arrow, the flute, all of this I believe should be fine, including the snowballs and stuff. All of it, I think it should be fine because everything is just kind of touching, so it shouldn't like easily fall apart. That's kind of my understanding of the mini making. Though I never like printed Koro, so I wouldn't know. Coming back to the ChatGPT art, because I wasn't getting like any sort of a reference whatsoever. If you generate the image of Koro in ChatGPT, it's fine. If she put like some effort into the description and ChatGPT gave her some sort of a result that satisfied her enough, you know, uh, that gives me like a sort of a clear direction of more or less what she would be like satisfied with Koro, you know. But as you can see, anyway, like the result is very, very different from what the ChatGPT suggested. And in the ChatGPT art, we can see that Koro is kind of like on his staff, hanging in the air, and Phobos was like, if I could have like this sort of a pose, that would be awesome. But ultimately, I didn't want to do this sort of a pose, and it's because if this mini ever gets printed, um, it would not be very stable. Like if it fell down, it would so easily break because you just have like a simple support of a staff. So it's not a very good way to doing like creating your mini. Um, and this sort of a pose that I created here is much more balanced and much more appropriate uh, for printing because we have like one support here, like here, one support here with the tail. The tail is connected also to the bowl, so that's like even more support. And then the mini is also supported right here, so it will be more difficult to actually break. If there could be anything that could break, well, I wanted to make the arrow even like smaller, but for the sake of printing, I kind of like left it relatively large. Yeah. So Phobos also wanted Koro to look like a young monkey, not like an old monkey. And when I thought about young monkeys, the first thing that popped into my mind is actually Curious George, and that's yeah, that's kind of like the inspiration for Koro's look. It's actually Curious George. The way the hair was done with Koro is that I'm actually using on the head short, messy, straight hair, but it doesn't look like this. If we go to the kid bashing and we take out each of the hairs out, if I take this out, this is just another hair inside of hair. And this here is another hair inside of hair. And you may start seeing like the problem. This is another hair inside of hair. And this is also hair inside of hair. Well, actually no, this is just like facial hair. Yeah, this is just a goatee. Goatees are pretty good for like making any additional changes to the hair. This is a beard. This. This is also a beard. I think this is another hair. Yep. So I simply didn't like how this looked in the back here. And it also, because I was using this sort of a hair, it didn't connect well here, like skin color wise, you know, because monkey body has like fur over here. And because it wasn't connected well to the skin, if I tried to paint this, it would change like the entire face. And I really didn't want that. I really didn't want this. So in order to cover it up, I just like stacked like a bunch of hair so that it looked more natural, and that was just kind of my solution to that problem. I think ultimately it looks pretty good, and it also like I think it made the hair a little bit more consistent. It's not like a haircut, you know, like a special haircut that the monkey has, but it's more of a monkey hair. Yep, I think it looks pretty natural and pretty good. What do you think? For the portrait, I went with the greenish color. I know the sky blue, but I'm sorry. I put some clouds in the background to maybe make you feel like you're looking at sky blue sky. I don't know. I just love the green on Koro. It looks so great, in my opinion. So yeah, maybe one absolutely last thing are the eyes. I just made the eyes like really huge so that he looks as cute as possible. Gave him a little and yeah, that's essentially Koro. That's about it. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and bye bye. See you next time.